Hi folks, welcome to Thursday night's tutorial. I should wait for a few people to come on before I make a start, so you don't miss the beginning. Very quick one tonight. I think the last couple have been quite quick, to be honest. I like to do little tutorials that are really quick for you to do, so you're not overphased by it. Ideal for beginners. This particular project, that's a little drawstring bag. It's just got a nice little ribbon top to it that you can just tie in a bow. I use these a lot for wrapping presents, actually. There we go. So this fabric, I'll talk about this fabric in a minute actually, but they are good for popping presents in, great for little party bags for kids, ideal for putting makeup in, putting your makeup wipes in that we made last week, also underwear, actually. You know, when you're going away and you've got your underwear that you've worn. I know some people take plastic bags, carrier bags, that kind of thing, but they're ideal for little underwear bags. So that's a really good idea as well. So, I mean, there's multiple uses. You could probably even put your sandwiches in to go to work. So this fabric, it's actually birthday fabric. I don't know whether you can see there. I know you're back to front, but it's got birthday on it. It's got party on it, candles, cake. It's got all little pictures of cakes on. So this is lovely fabric for making little bags for party, party bags when kids go to parties and they go home with a little treat. It's by a company called Clothwork. It's quite a high-end company, but this is only £6.99 a metre, 100% cotton, quite nice to work with. So so yeah, perfect. So I'll make a start. There's a couple of people on, so I'll make a start. I'm just going to angle the camera down. Now, there's not a great deal of I mean, there obviously is sewing with this, but there's if you press this first, press it all into place, the sewing actually is really quick and it comes together very quickly. So all I'm going to do is show you, give you a couple of measurements and show you how to press it all together, and then when you sew it, it does come together so much quicker rather than trying to sew it and then press it. Now, it doesn't matter what size piece of fabric you have, all of the measurements I'm going to give you for the pressing are all the same, so just bear that in mind. So the first bit I'm going to press, this is actually a non-directional. If you see, the party words are going that way and that way, so that's the best fabric to work with when you're doing something like this. But if you have got a directional fabric, the bit that we're going to press is going to be the top, so make sure if there's any patterns or anything, it's facing the right way. Okay, so first of all, I'm just going to run across the top and I'm going to measure from the top 2.5 inches, and I'm going to I've put a pin in there already, and I'm going to do the other side. I'm not sure if you can see there because it's and I'm just going to put a pin in there, and then I'm going to fold that over on the pins. Sometimes it's easier to use a pin when you're working with a length like this, because when you fold that side of the pin and that side of the pin, you know that edge is straight there. And then all I'm going to do is press that. It's kind of like when we did the wallet the other week. Use the pins to help press it into place. Now I'm just going to check my board is open properly because that felt like it was going to move. There we go. Okay, I'm going to take those pins out now. So I've just pressed that into place and then opened it up, and then I'm going to press 1/2 inch in. Just all the way along. Mind your fingers when you're doing this. And then pop it down, and then I'm going to press them both then into place so it's a nice crisp finish. Okay, and that's that first bit done. Okay, then we're going to go to one of the raw ends, not the long piece at the bottom, but the raw end. I'm just going to put a little snip there where that other pin is, and where I'm going to measure down there and give you that measurement now, because that's where we're going to sew our side seam. So that should be just under 5 inches. Do it at 5, just under 5 is okay, but I've just put a little, notch there so I know where it is. I can put my pin back in after I've done this, but obviously I'm going to press this now so the pin's going to get in the way. So we're just going to pull this in, and then I'm going to measure that. That wants to be 1 inch. So I'm just going to take that over a bit there, and again I'm going to press that there. Don't worry about pressing this out because we can just go over that again later. And then I'm going to open it, and then I'm going to fold that to the press line. So that should be 1/2 inch now. Press that, fold it over again, press it down. So this just creates a nice, basically a nice, when we sew this down later on, it's all the raw edges are going to be enclosed inside, because I'm actually going to do a French seam across the bottom, but it's a bit more difficult here to do a French seam because we need the opening at the top. So what I'm going to do there is I'm just going to fold that down and fold that down. I'm going to repress that edge there just to make sure that's nice and crisp. Okay. Now you can do this without pressing it first, but I think it's so much easier, especially if you're making about 10 of them for kids' parties. Just go ahead and press them all first and then sew them up, and you'll be amazed at how quickly they come together. So again, the other side, another inch. Now you can make these huge, you can make them small. You can make really big ones to put pyjamas in. But all the measurements for this part should be the same. I mean, if you're making tiny bags, you might want to make them a bit smaller, play with the measurements a bit. But if you're making a varied amount, let's say 6 inches by 6 inches or 18 inches by 18 inches, this is probably the best way to do it. Just keep to these measurements. Okay, just fold that bit over again. There we go. Now I'm just going to open that bit up now and find my little notch, and I'm going to put a pin in that side so I can see where I'm sewing to. Just there. Okay, get rid of this ironing board. Okay, so that was all pressed into the back of the fabric, which is the you've obviously got your printed side, which is your right side, so that was all pressed into the wrong side. So if you put your right sides together, find your notch or find your pin, open the pressed side that you've just, the bit that you've just pressed, just open that. There we go. Don't worry too much if it's not level at the bottom. You're better to make sure that it's level at the top where you've just pressed it. That's slightly out where I've cut that at the bottom, only a tiny smidge, but let it go out at the bottom rather than the top. And then I'm just going to put that pin through both pieces of fabric. Now all I'm going to do is I need to sew along this. I'm going to sew a seam along this press line, so it's not the first one near the raw edge, it's the second one in, and I'm going to back tack here all the way down and then back tack at the bottom there, and that's the first bit of sewing that we do. There's not a great deal of sewing actually to this. I'm going to use a what stitch am I going to use? I'm going to use a 3.5, I think. Hi Sandra, hi Louise. I haven't even been looking there, sorry. I've been standing up pressing, so say hello if you've just come on. So just a couple of back tack stitches and then sew right down to the bottom. So try and use that crease mark if you can as a guide. Just help with your straight stitching actually. Okay, so I'm going to cut my threads off there. Okay, so I'm going to now turn that inside out so it's the right way round now. And what I want to do, this part is a little bit tricky because you've got this in the way, but if it's not too long, you should be fine. Now, the best thing to do is probably pin this. So what I've done there is the bit that I've pressed, if you can see, let me come back a bit. So as you can see, the raw edge, I'm going to turn it in and then pop it down on itself. So pin that bit there. And if you do that all the way down, if you pin it, you know it's going to stay in place then. Just a couple of pins, 2 or 3 pins should be enough. And then I'm going to do the other side as well, because, let me pull this back a little bit, that's better. Actually, let me pop that light on, you might be able to see better, is that better? There we go. And then the same on this side, if you can see that. Now, because you've pressed this into place, it's easy to fold. Just fold that down there. And again there. Whereas if you hadn't pressed this, you'd be fighting with this now. So it just makes it so much easier as you're working with it. One at the bottom there. Now, to get this under the machine, you've obviously got all, so let me just show you. That's actually like a tube now. But what I want to do is I'm going to top stitch this. I'm going to start at the top here where the opening is, come all the way down to the bottom, and you can either back tack there and take it out and then turn it round. But the best way is to just sew down to here, lift your foot up, keep your needle down, and then turn it this way and then sew across, turn it that way. So you're actually sewing in a U shape. So you haven't, while you've got all of this messing about there, you can actually just sew along it, and it's easier to do it than take it out of the machine. So that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to start at the top here, back tack there, and go all the way down, round and up into a U shape. Now, make sure when you take your pins out that you put them back in your pin cushion. Now, if you sew as close to the edge as you can, it'll help practice your top stitching. It doesn't have to be too neat, don't worry, and you can do a zigzag if you want, or a fancy stitch. All we're doing here is securing that seam and actually securing in the raw edge. So it makes it quite a nice finish, especially if you're giving these as a gift bag. If you've made your makeup bag, your makeup wipes, and you want to finish it off with the same fabric. So I'm just going to lift my foot up, my needle's down, I'm going to turn it that direction, go down, sew to the other side. Just take that pin out, it's in the way. And then foot back up. Rather than fighting with it, taking it out, starting it up again, that's so much easier doing it that way. Now my pins are going the other direction here, so be careful you don't stab yourself with a pin. Okay. And then give a quick back tack at the top. And then out again. Okay, so if you can see that now, all I've done is I've top stitched that seam. So we need that actually sewn down. So when we fold that over and we sew that down, when you pop your ribbon or your cord or whatever in there, you need that actually sewn down so it doesn't keep catching on it. So it's nicer to sew all your seams in together. Okay, so now to do the bottom, I mean, you can, if it's just for a quick thing, you can turn it inside out and just run a seam along it and do a zigzag along there. But I actually think a French seam. Hi Lynn. Oh, I've posted out your parcel today, Lynn. I'm just going to trim that off ever so slightly and straighten it up. If you remember before, it was slightly uneven on one side. So yeah, I'm going to do a French seam along there because I think it'll all be all enclosed like the side seams, and it'll just look so much nicer. So when you're doing a normal seam, obviously you've got right sides together and you just sew across the bottom. You do your zigzag or your overlocking, and then when you turn it through, you've got your seam on the inside there. But to do a French seam, you're kind of doing one seam, then folding it over and doing another one. So you have to start with your wrong sides together. So if you start on the side that is already, you know where your seam is, when you're running across here, you'll always finish nice and neatly on that side. If you start the other way, and for whatever instance, say your top is slightly longer than the other one, it'll ruche there. So start with the seam side and then run a stitch, so back tack here and back tack there, and get as close to the edge as you can. If you can't get close to the edge, don't worry, because again, that's practice. Just sew your seam and then we can trim that down. So I'll do that actually and show you what you can do if you don't get that close. Okay, so if I just, I'm going to do quite a wide seam here because it needs to be fairly thin for a French seam. I'm just going to back tack and let the sewing machine just run right across. And it's nice and flat that side because I've started on the right side. So don't think you can see there. So my stitch line is there. So it's about 1/2 inch in, and I'm going to trim that down as close as I dare. If you can sew that close, that's brilliant. It saves you trimming it down. But don't worry, French seams are a bit of a practice. Okay, so we need to turn that inside out now. I'm just going to take that thread off and make sure that you poke that corner through, that side and that side as well. Now you can turn it through and poke it through, but what you can do is just give it a little prod with your knitting needle. You can already see how nice that seam is there, all sewn in rather than being quite raw. So then all we need to do is we're going to sandwich that other seam into this new seam now. So like we did before, we're going to sew right across, and I'm going to start again on the side where my seam is. Now you should be able to feel that extra fabric under there, and you want to make sure that you sew to the left of that to make sure that you've sandwiched that in, because otherwise it will poke out the bottom. So if I sew some of it as close as I can, and then if I sew somewhere I think the seam will poke out, I can show you what I mean. Let me just feel that. So I'm going fairly close, too close there, but I can show you when I take it out. I mean, it's easily remedied. All you do is you just go back over it again. So I've done that so it's not straight, but I can give you an idea of what I mean by making sure it's sandwiched in. Yeah, you can just about see. I mean, hopefully you can see on this, on the camera, if I get a bit closer. So you can just see there, it's all sewn in neatly, but just there, see where that raw edge is there, where I've sewn not close, I've sewn too close, so that there hasn't been sandwiched in. So if you find that you've done that, just turn it back out again and just go over the seam. So just take it a little bit further in, because that's the whole point, is to sew in the raw edges with a French seam. So I'm just going to go over that again. And again, because it's inside and at the bottom, no one's going to see that you've done two seams there. So don't worry, it is practice. Just keep going. French seams on things like this are lovely. On tote bags as well, they're lovely. They make it look really nice. Okay, so again, I'm going to put my thumb in. I'm going to use that finger to fold it over, and I'm going to poke it through with that finger. Okay, so all we need to do now is finish the top. So don't worry too much about the raw edge here yet. Just turn the raw edge in, and I would actually pin this bit just to keep it in place. Just fold it in, and because you press that, that should go and fall quite nicely now. It should just fall where it wants to go. Just pin it down. and you're not fighting with it. You know it's the exact measurement that you want. Okay. And then all I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to secure this, the edge where the raw edge is tucked under slightly, just on the edge there. I'm going to sew right the way along. Back tack it here, go all the way along and back tack it there. Now sew as close to the edge as you can, but be careful that you don't come off, because obviously this is where your ribbon or your cord is going to be, so you don't want that poking out. Now you are going to go through a fair few thicknesses here, so just take your time back tacking. I would start further in rather than starting right on the edge. Start further in and then back tack backwards to the beginning, and then carry on. So just sew right across there. Just be careful of the pins as you're sewing, because obviously they're horizontal, so you don't want to poke yourself or get it under the machine as well. So at this point now, you could probably leave it at that and that would be fine, because you've got your opening now. Everything's folded in, all the raw edges are in, and you could leave it as that and just gather it with your ribbon and it would be fine. But I quite like, I don't know whether you can see on this one, so I've done like a little there's like a little frill on the top. I always think it looks nice, especially if it's an underwear bag. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do another channel. So that channel there, that is about 2 inches, give or take. Yeah, that's 2 inches spot on. So you can either do a 1/2 inch channel or a 1 inch channel. Depends how thick your ribbon is, to be honest. I think my ribbon is 1 inch. So I'm going to do that in half. So I've got about 1 inch on either side. Now you can either measure it and pin it, or you can kind of just guess it if you want to, because it's gathered up. It doesn't have to be perfect. If it's a bit wobbly, don't worry about it. Or what you could do is you could get some tape, some coloured tape like electrical tape, and measure from your needle to this side. If I can show you here, you can measure 1 inch there. Also, some machines do have measurements across here as well, so have a look at those from your needle and make sure that you measure with your tape. So if you put your foot down on your tape, you can see that, and then measure, and then put your electrical tape under, so you've got a guide to go with. If you're struggling to sew straight, that is, if you think you can wing it, just wing it. Again, it's not couture garments that you're making. You're making party bags or little gathered bags for makeup wipes and things. So this is good practice actually for straight stitching. So just go with it. The main thing is on the ends, make sure that you get it right on the ends. And then back tack that side. And then that is it. Really simple, really easy. I'm going to give that a nice press actually, because although we've pressed it once, we've obviously done the bottom seam, so that will need pressing. Just make sure that you cut off all your bits of cotton. And then, so this fabric is ideal for party bags because it's just, it just screams party, because it's got all the birthday cakes on, it's got birthday writing on it, candles. Just give that a nice press. And then the other one I used red ribbon in. I'm going to use green this time. So just get yourself a pin. Let me grab that one, it's bigger. Pop it in the end of your ribbon. And then go from the back rather than the top. So move that one out of the way, and then not your first channel, because obviously that's going to be your gather. Pop your pin in the other channel, and then just hold it with your thumb and use the rest of your fingers. Push it with those fingers, and then just use that finger to hold it. When you've pushed it, hold it with that one, push it again, and just keep sliding it through. I would do, if you measure your ribbon, because obviously once it's gathered up you want it to be in a bow. Now sometimes it's a little bit tricky to get it through there, but just wiggle your pin and you'll get through, because you've sewn that, you see. If you hadn't have sewn that bit down, what would happen is it would keep catching under that bit there, so you would always be struggling trying to get that through. Okay, and then all you need to do, tighten a bow. And there are a couple of party bags, or little bags for all kinds of things really. That one's slightly bigger than that one, you can make them smaller. Let me lift it up. Yeah, as I say, don't forget, when it doesn't matter how big the bag is, if you kind of stick to those measurements, you'll know that your seams on that side and your little gathered stitch on the top will always be the same. So unless they're very, very tiny bags, then you might struggle. It might be, that channel might be too big, but this is, if I measure this for you, this finishes at, let me just get my tape measure. Oops. So that is measured at 10 inches by 9.5. So yeah, not bad, you know, about 26 centimetres by 26 centimetres. So quite a nice size actually for a little party bag. So yeah, so I hope that was useful. I'm already working on next week's tutorial. We'll be launching the lessons at some point this week, maybe. The first couple of ones are nearly full actually, but I will launch them, and I'll launch the ones that I'm doing in July as well. I'll put them on the Facebook page at some point. We'll be working on the website later tonight. Hopefully that's going to be launched soon. And that's about it really. So hopefully have a good week. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope it's going to be useful. They are really useful for all kinds of things you can put. I mean, what would you put in them? Lots of different things. Okay, so I shall see you next week. Take care. Bye.